Where?
Headed to a little barrio called El Cerrito, Nuevo Mexico. That's where my family all originates from. And we're gonna go and pay a little tribute to one of my uncles that was a war hero during the Second World War. And see other family members. ATMM, toda madre, man.
Literally come out of the mountains right into the spot. Anywhere else, you call this Keystone or Aspen or one of those places. But in New Mexico, you call it El Cerrito. That's where he grew up at? Right where he's at? That's where he parked at? Yeah. Nice.
Okay, this is the corral, no?
That's the corral. Yeah, that pile of rocks. That pile of rocks.
Yeah, in the winter, in the summertime, the men used to go up in them things, cut down all the trees, drag them down. All winter, the women would cut the branches off and cut them into pieces and store them all up for the winter so they wouldn't freeze to death. Everybody had a job.
Yeah, it's kind of a big gig, huh?
See the inside, it should really...
Oh, she call him over here. Hey, Ben. Ben.
That missed him. The bullet's probably pretty close to his head.
I have to step out.
Alrighty.
Oh, yeah. Is that the mean dog?
And this is where we're at in New Mexico.
Right. Santa Fe's here. This is the Pecos River. The Cerrito's right. So it's just on right there.
That way it won't, fall off of this.
I'm putting that thing up on the wall.
I already know what happened.
I do that as a test. As a test.
Yeah, it's been to the mill a little bit. Yes.
Brother Andy,
You didn't tell me anything. Put your hand up. Put your hand up this. Now start this desk.
This desk here was the desk that my auntie teacher here. When my brother Andy and my brother Paul were little guys, actually when my uncle came back from the war, my brother Paul introduced introduced her to my Uncle Abel, and they became husband and wife. But this is my auntie's desk. In 1930.
Now, why does she have this desk?
She was a school teacher here. She taught school out of here.
And this is the school teacher's desk.
Yes, from probably the 1930s.
Wow, Warren, what a wonderful position.
Tell my brother level. I was going to say I brought her level.
Yeah, did you?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
I used to help him a lot at his place.
Mary. Go ahead. Okay. Say what it is.
That church there is the Church of El Cerrito. We have ancestors buried out in front of that church. My grandmother's sister, my grandmother's brother are all buried in front of this church.
Did they have
I really want to thank you for being here to celebrate this occasion with us, the completion of the El Cerrito Schoolhouse. And I knew it'd be exciting, but I've already talked to so many people who represent so much history here. We can't thank you enough for coming. This is a true passage for what's going on here for us. And at the end of this, we have a register book, and we're going to put it on this table when we get done talking. We ask all of you to sign it, and I know many of you have already told me you have memories of being here in this school or in this village or whatnot. Please share your comments with us. We want to hear those so much. This schoolhouse started out as a dream over 30 years ago in Dick's mind, and we kind of planned and thought we'd try to rebuild it, and it was only a decade ago we really got into earnest about the planning and the building, and every year Cerritanos and other people would come from outside the village to help us, and each year we began to raise it up with the earth and the water of this land, making the bricks, putting up the structure, and today it looks like it looked in 1939. When we started, and many of you know if you were here, it was just a little tiny hill. The old adobe walls had slumped down, and you wouldn't even know that there was a structure here. And so this is a special place, and you guys make it so much more special for us. Without Dick, this place would have never been thought of and would have never been built. His vision, his determination, his great resources he put into this made this happen. And I want to thank Dick and his loving wife, Susan, who has supported him in these 10 years. Thank you for being here. It is so wonderful.
Everybody knows why Brock is my brother now.
And our cook.
Okay, if I stand here, is that okay?
He's our brother too. We've seen him for 10 years.
Thank you. I'll take the hug on that.
What I'd like to do first is acknowledge a few villagers, people that live right here in the village, that have been very, very helpful in this whole project. Josie de Vaca, there's Joe. Wave your hand, Joe. We stayed at Joe's house year after year. Not only did we stay at his house, we camped in his backyard. We set up our tool, our saws, our carpentry shop in his backyard. Joe is the most hospitable guy I know and the most generous guy, and thank you very much, Joe. Thank you. My pleasure. How about John Burns? Is John still here?
No, he left.
Well, I was going to say we also used John's house, and we draped our power cord down from his house for power down here. And a story that John would wince at if he heard me say this is that we used his front loader as a bulldozer right here to get the dirt out from this foundation. But he didn't hear that. Jack and Heidi Landstrup, right here. Jack, put your hands outside. The very first two people that I met when I drove into the village in October of 1979, that was 35 years ago. The very first two people were Jack and Heidi, and they have been good to me ever since, and they've been supportive of this project, and we appreciate them. Thank you, guys. When I was getting to know the village in 1980, Margie hosted a función, and she invited me to attend. And I sat at the dinner table next to the Catholic priest. That, for me, was a thrill. I'll never forget it. Thank you, Margie. Do we have Rick Quintana? How about Luisa Quintana? Not here. Luisa and Tony Zavala. Tony was one of our workers. Macario and Rose Torres. Here's Rose. I'll tell you what. Mac grew up in a house right across the street in this open lot. The house is no longer there. Mac went to this school, and Mac was extremely helpful in rebuilding this school. Year after year, Mac was there with his power equipment. Mac, I don't know if we really could have done it without you. We really appreciate it. And let me say about and year after year, wonderful Mexican food for our dinners. People came to have our dinners, not to work on the school. We thank you, Rose. Thanks for all that. In 1882, that was more than 130 years ago, and they built it to be one large room, as you see right here, 20 feet by 50 feet. And that is that's 1,000 square feet. And that's a pretty big single room. And during the 19-teens and into the 1920s, the number of children going to school here grew, got larger. And so El Cerrito was allowed to hire 2 school teachers. And when they did that, they put a partition someplace about in here between the upper grades and the lower grades. And they also, I think at that time, put in a second front door, next to which Edmund is standing over here. What happens then is that the partition comes down for the dances that El Cerrito hosted on given Saturday nights. This was probably the most fun thing that happened in the village. All the people came, the old people, the young people, they all came. And the women stood or sat along this wall, And the men were along the wall with the front doors.
My sister remembers that. And my brother right there.
And when the Spanish music began, you know, with violin and guitar, the man over here would walk across and ask the woman to dance. Now this was very significant because it wasn't just for people from El Cerrito. Men and women, but mainly men, came from other villages, and this is how they met. Young women they might marry. And person after person that I talked to from the village, when I said, well, how did you meet your spouse? The answer was, well, at the dance. This was kind of the mechanism that got people meeting each other. Well, okay, then in the 1940s, the population of El Cerrito began to go down significantly, and the school-age population went down. People were moving to the city from the village. In this case, from this village, they moved especially to Pueblo, Colorado. And by 1951, there were only 9 students left. Now, Margie, over here, was one of those 9 students. And Ramon Esquivel was the teacher that year. And in June of 1951, San Miguel County closed the school as a school. And from then on, the kids here were bused to Villanueva, to the grade school, I should point that way, to Villanueva.
I'm Pablo Tapi's son. He loved this place with all his heart. I'm not going to get all emotional here. That's Pablo there. This friend here is my uncle Ambrosio Tapia. He was in World War II, and on December 31st, 1944, he saved a man's life that was getting shot at and bombed at, and he pulled him out right before the Germans blew up this position, and he got his teeth shot out. And so, but he survived, and he got the Bronze Star and the Purple Heart. And so that's, Ambrosio was born in that house right there. Same with my father, in that house. I could show you the room if we brought the keys, but we forgot the keys. But they were born in that house right there. And Ambrosio in 1911 and my dad in 1936. So they're old school, you know. They're one of the last of the old school, and the numbers are getting down.
We're old school.
Yeah. So, anyway, me and my uncle Tomas put that together, and we appreciate, Edmund, your picture. So, thank you. That's all I got.
Is there anybody else who would like to say a word?
I want to. I'll say something.
Yes, please do.
It's something that I have never forgotten. I was like 6 maybe, and my dad showed me how to say a speech for a program, and so they bought me a dress and everything, and they sent me there and opened the curtains. I didn't say a thing because I saw this man sitting here. Oh, my dad, I froze. Oh. So they closed the curtains and I ran to the door.
Anybody else care to say a word? Yeah,
Dick has mentioned many of the volunteers and many of the local people that have been of assistance to make this happen. And I think he skipped over a couple of things which we in the village really appreciate a lot. And let's start with the first one, which is our acequia. We have, like all of the villages up and down the Rio Pecos, an acequia that runs almost a full mile from where we sit here. It is in very difficult country. There are times when the boulders fall off the side of the mesa and take it out entirely. It is beyond the capability of the people that live here under many circumstances to repair it. Dick, without being pushed or even, I think, really requested to show up here, and he started showing up with a van load of, I think football players, huh? Now, the University of Oklahoma has a great football team. I think everybody knows that. They also have great acequia cleaners. And so we had this massive number of young men, year after year after year, and some young women, also pretty strong and aggressive. And they would come and join us for a 2 or 3 day cleaning of our acequia, and that went on for 20 years. Well, pretty close, huh? Something like that. And I think we can look at our acequia today and say it wouldn't be anywhere near the same water delivery system that it is today if it hadn't been for this man, and a whole other list of men that came with them to help us clean that acequia on an annual basis. So it was great they redid this school. It's great that they set it up so that we all could appreciate it together. It was an additional benefit to have them come year after year after year after year, making the water go. This little village is nothing without the water from the river. And it's very important to us, and it was very important to us during many of those difficult years that they showed up right on schedule, worked their hearts out, turned around with that, and we didn't see them for a year. Thank you, Dick. Thank you.
Anybody want to say a word?
I would. I'd like to introduce my mom. This is Agatha Armijo. She grew up in this house right here in the building. She's 91. And she remembers when the first book was when they came and did all the photography, and she was not taken in any of the pictures because my grandparents, especially my grandmother, who was of course very old school and didn't like pictures of the women taken. So my uncles are in the book, but none of my aunts are. There was 10 of them, so there's 3 uncles, but they're all mentioned in the book, and my grandparents. And it means a lot to us.
I might point out that at the end of the room right here are Clyde and Wanda Eastman. They live in Mesivia. They've driven up for this event. Clyde knew Charles Loomis. Charles Loomis was one of the 2 authors of that classic study in 1941, the USDA Rural Sociologist study of this village. And well, thank you for coming, Clyde and Wanda.
Hello everyone, my name is Albert Quintana, and wow, how emotional can this get? I need some water. You have some water?
Well, we got water.
I'm such a pansy, you know. Thank you. I'm the descendant, like many of you, Quintana, Juan Quintana, and my dad, Elijo Quintana. I believe it was 1910 when Epitacio and Juan moved from here to Valladolid, New Mexico, out east to develop some more land. And my dad would always tell me about this place. He had never been here before, but he heard stories about it. Louise, my wife, Quintana, right here, she and I, we have never been here. We were at a reunion one year at Villanueva, back about, 30 years ago, but we never made it this far. And just listening to my dad talk about this place, it was like we took the wrong road. We went from Bernal and we took this treacherous road. And Luis said, should we turn around? We're driving an Audi, a 2013 Audi, and I said, we're going to ruin the car. So let's just keep going. And our GPS lost its direction. And all of a sudden it said, are we going to Villanueva? Are we going to El Cerrito? So what happened was, all of a sudden we get over this hill, and there was the legendary homeland of the Quintanas. Wow. I couldn't believe how beautiful it looked. Right off this hill up here. Just right over the top. So, and then I met up with Dr. Nostrand. I forgot how we met, but I guess he was selling his book in Las Vegas. My cousin says, oh, there's this book about our family. Our family? Our family's important? Yeah, okay. And then I hooked up with Nostrand. And I've been to Oklahoma, and I visited him in his home, and I'm proud to be his friend.
Nice. Nice.
Okay. Oh yeah, we're from Colorado.
Anybody else care?
I just wanted to, I remember we didn't have a window there and there was a fireplace.
Wow.
There was a fireplace
Yeah.
and no window.
With Holly and Alfonso Torres lived in that part.
Yep.
There was one of those called not a regular,
Yes. Exactly. What Margie is pointing out is that we tried to make the schoolhouse as authentic as we could from the street view. And it does look very much like the original schoolhouse. But when we got inside and onto the back side, we took some liberties. And one liberty was a window at that end, as Margie just pointed out. And another liberty was a door right here, a door with windows in it so that we could have more light. We thought it would simply be a better way to restore it. So, so that was our plan. Okay, anybody, any thoughts?
Your dad used to belong to the Charros in Pueblo. My wife's grandma used to own Dorateas. So they were in the Charros together. So that's how I knew my friend through my dad, but he used to go to the meetings over there and I used to go.
So, you remember very much about it?
Just somewhat. He was always real clean cut and I was at a...
No, I'm saying about the grandma and the grandpa.
No.
I don't either. Manuel, he remembers all that.
See, I was the last one born in our family, so
Me too. I was the baby.
Yeah.
I'm still finding out.
Yeah.
And I keep missing the ceremonies.
Everyone on here is our family.
Seriously?
Everyone on here we're related to. We're related to, so if you look at the name, Pablo Tapia, Quintana, Vigil,
Tapia.
Dile, that's my mom's, and Felipita and Lucinda. Lucinda is your great-great-great-grandma. And then, I don't know about the Aragones, I'm not
She
sure.
was with us.
Yeah, something like that.
cemetery yet. The cemetery's up here, but there's some graves in the church. He's in the corner. He's got a big cross, and Maria de la Crucita is right next to him. Who is that? Natasha. He said, "Is he was buried here?" Yeah.
Oh, we got to get that. Is it close?
Yeah.
1990s.
Because what I was thinking of, and I wanted to see the original survey because I was really interested in these two guys that came to a really Spanish village back then. What did two Anglo guys think of the village and the culture and stuff like that? That's what I was thinking.
Rust and Move and Tuck of the Nail. But if you go back in that corner over there, he's got a whole thing about it.
Yes.
You might want to take photos of it, because that gives you the whole history of it.
I really did.
I don't like
the original study.
Yeah, it was the
by Loomis and Langdon.
Huh?
By Loomis and Langdon.
Yeah, it was the okay, it was the let me think how it was. USDA, the United States Department of Agriculture.
Yes.
Did a study on 6 different villages, and they were all isolated.
In New Mexico, though, or where?
No, all over the U.S. One of them was down in Arkansas. I don't remember the rest of them.
Oh, it didn't matter the ethnic diversity of the people.
No, they wanted to find ones that were isolated, and they wanted to see how they survived by being as isolated as they were.
Yes.
And then how they migrated out of that town.
Yes. Oh, the actual structure. All the mechanisms that got them to spread out. How did man spread?
The guy that was just here, I see him right over there. His kids, he's got a doctor, a lawyer, accountant.
Yes.
And his dad is in one of those pictures, in the old picture, he's carrying a can of lard like that one over there. He's going to that sequia for some water. They wouldn't throw anything away. I mean, that can right there could have a lot of use. So they were going, he was 8 or 9 years old. And that's why we have that here. But
it's things that you have to go over and over, but really where everybody comes from.
Yeah, and then in that old book too, it shows a bunch of kids rolling an old tire down. They didn't have toys like they have now, video games and all that. That toy was an old tire.
Whatever was around them, right? I like that part. Shows again. Hey, introduce yourself. I'm gonna hold on. And rolling.
I'm Edmund Gallegos. My mother, Serafia Vigil, was born about a block east of the old schoolhouse, and in the late 40s, my mom and dad moved to Pueblo, Colorado, where they got a job at the mill, and that's how we were able to avoid a lot of the poverty that was here in this village, and we were able to get better education, and now, because of them, we have a better life.
But they all started here in El Cerrito. So that's what led the migration of people out of here, was the fact that there was nowhere to go, nothing to do, and basically all you did was what you raised and grew is what you lived and fed on. There was no economic advancement. No.
And if you look at that book, there was 2 really wealthy men here that owned a lot of sheep, and so they would hire some of the men in the area to herd sheep or bring in wood or take care of the crops. So they made a little bit of money there, but not a whole lot. They just enough to maybe survive. So an awful lot of them maybe cut wood and they took it to Las Vegas.
Yeah.
They cut cedar posts out of all of these trees that are here. I took them down there and sold them, made a little bit of extra money to buy.
So they were on the grind and the hustle.
Yeah, whatever that they, needed for their staples that they couldn't actually grow here or raise, they could buy it down there. But they had to have some kind of bartering system or actual money.
For a little bit of external sustenance. Exactly. But they found a way to do it out of this place. The walls were a blessing, but the walls were also like a cage.
Yeah,
so
right. An awful lot of them, didn't want to leave because they didn't feel comfortable not knowing English that well and being in an Anglo environment, and they didn't trust them and all of that kind of stuff. But that's just the way it was back then. And we can all understand it. And
absolutely.
It takes time to, realize, hey, you can do whatever anybody else can do.
Absolutely.
All you need is that chance.
Absolutely.
You might have to work twice as hard as that other guy.
Yes.
But it's there for you.
That seems to be the thing that drove them all, their willingness to work as hard as they have to, no matter what. And I see it in a lot of the siblings, I see it in the offspring and the kids, because I'm related to a couple of them by marriage, but it amazes me all the things they've done. Man, too bad they didn't breed presidents here. You know what I mean? You'd have a hard-working guy who did things right.
We have a relative now that's running for U.S. representative.
That would be Abel Tapp. Right.
Are you going to leave?
Leaving.
Thanks for...
It comes out some way.
Somebody's sharing their electricity.
Wow, you're a professional. You're doing great.
Who? Oh.
Grew up here?
Actually, I was a
Sympathize.
But yeah, Camino. They continued it on the bottom line.
Well, it goes right behind the school.
These are real graves.
Yeah, and the people that
Lived here. So they burned.
Three panels, and it was in a museum in Santa Fe, the Museum of, maybe, yes, I think it was, yes. And Nancy Hanks, and it said El Cerrito Village. It had this in their church. I was amazed. So I went up and I got a photo of it. And it's in the book. It's in chapter 10 of the book. And I was thrilled. What happened was when they put the roof on, the pitched roof. And this was the first building in the village to get a pitched roof. And I think the school was the second. And about 1917 when they pitched it. Everything was a flat roof until then. And when they did that, apparently they didn't have enough money. And Stern, the contractor in Las Vegas, said, well, I'll simply take the altar screen. Which is, now I'm not 100% sure of that, but I'm pretty sure that that's exactly what happened. So, anyway, it's in a museum, and that's nice.
That's Harry Quintana's dad.
A lot of museums nowadays are forced, and some partly willingly, to give up products like that, especially if it was looted. I guess you can consider this looting, and get it back to the place where it belongs.
In there. Well, there's no people in there, so.
Cruising.
you never send them a picture.
And the village used to
Oh yeah,
be
there's
out
Paul.
here.
There's a hand.
Oh wow. There was Paul. Oh look, the seniors are saying ask him what you do. That's a good idea. That's a great idea.
My brothers are featured in the military board. How would I get my picture and my other brother's picture on there? I'll follow the brother.
Well, that's something I don't have control over. But
Margie would be in charge of that.
I think Margie is the nominal Mayodoma of the church. I got the key from her just now to come in here. And I think probably, yes, that would be the person to approach. So you're Paul's brother?
Yes, sir.
Tell me your name.
Tomas.
Oh, you're Tomas. Well, Tomas, yeah. I didn't know if you were going to speak or if Benjamin.
I'm shy guy. Paul was
Yeah. Well, I think Andres lived in Puebla, didn't he?
Yes.
And didn't he live down in,
He lived across the street from my mom and dad all his life of marriage.
what was the district that they lived in? Bessemer?
No, Dog Patch.
Oh, they lived in Dog Patch. Well, I talked to him. I'm quite sure.
Right.
He was alive in about the 80s still, 1980s.
Just barely. He passed away like in 80s.
Well, then I may have, it was Abel, but I'm not.
Abel was my uncle.
Maybe it was Abel then.
Yeah, he was my dad's brother.
I see, yeah.
And Ambrosio, the other one we did the picture of,
Yeah.
that received the Bronze Star for his heroic actions in the Second World War.
Right.
Yeah, our whole family is pretty much military.
Yeah.
Represented
That's a
in this
very
country.
nice plaque that went up on the wall.
This be where I come from, people. Ain't much to it, but nothing but surviving, hardcore. Had to be tough to live in this place.
This is the original foundation for the city right here.
They say it gets tougher the further you go down the street, and we lived in the last house.
It was meant to be though. Okay, so I go back out this road?